So, on the surface of Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, which is what we're jumping back into here. On the surface, this is a story about Miles traveling to another universe and looking for his little sister, Billy. But underneath the surface, we've got a lot of new information about Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym that we've got to talk about. Because when you combine what we learn in this issue to what we know about Janet and Hank and their origin, as well as the lies that they both tried to keep, and man, this one gets pretty crazy. So with that said, viewers' discretion is advised. If you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, this picks up weeks after what we saw in issue 1, when Miles and his 11-month-old little sister Billy inadvertently traveled from Earth 616 to Earth 6160 when Billy activated the Maker's invitation. And with Miles trying to find his sister by searching in New York and looking in places like their home on this world, it soon after led to him getting snatched up by Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym. But what Miles didn't know is when he landed in New York, his sister landed all the way out in Wakanda, where she was soon after found by someone who we didn't see at the time. And this is where we come back, which again is weeks later, where we find Billy in Wakanda with Ororo, Eric, T'Challa, and Shuri. And just to be clear, before we go any further, I gotta say I'm pretty sure this is happening before where we're at currently in the Ultimate Black Panther series, because this dropped just before Ultimate Black Panther issue 18, which dropped in July. But even with these two issues releasing so close together, I can only imagine this happened before Eric sent Storm to go with T'Challa, back when T'Challa was like, okay, I'm going on this mission to investigate Dark Vibranium, while Eric stayed in Wakanda as a general to take care of things while T'Challa was gone, which on the flip side is what T'Challa suggested. So yeah, as of right now, I'm not sure exactly when this fits into Ultimate Black Panther, but I'm sure as this continues and we make our way closer to Ultimate Endgame, which is dropping December 31st, as we move closer to that point, I imagine the timelines for the tie-in will make more sense, because the main issues are following real time. But either way, even with that said, I'll let you guys know as it comes. But in the here and now, with Billy just popping up in Wakanda, on one hand, with there being so much going on from the start of this series, T'Challa's basically like, of course a baby just slipped into Wakanda, because their attention and their resources have been spread in different directions for a while. But with Billy being here for weeks, Shuri's had the opportunity to run scans, and though her scans are incomplete, she notices that the residual energy that she's picked up from Billy match those of the Maker. So that has T'Challa like, okay, so this is a weaponized baby. Only for Shuri to tell him no, not a weapon, but something different. And that's what Shuri tells him here. The energy readings more closely resemble a teleportation algorithm than a weapon of war. It's tied to a more prominent and sophisticated energy signature, but my team has yet to fully decrypt the information. And even here, Eric is more so with T'Challa, because he's like, the Maker and his forces are known to be inventive in their terror. Are we sure it's not a weapon? But at this point, with T'Challa seeing the layout of what Shuri's team has put together, this just has him like, no, Killmonger, I believe my sister is right. These readings do not behave as weapons would. It would appear closer to portal tech, which now, begs the question of what purpose this portal technology was meant for. But I also want to kind of just throw in here the fact that this group that we're seeing, it's the same people from the inner circle that T'Challa put together back when he first learned about there being spies in Wakanda, which would also include Queen Okoye, though she's not here at the moment. And I bring that up just to say that things aren't as secretive here as they would have been in moments like this in the Ultimate Black Panther series, and I just imagine that's because Dennis Camp is writing this story, with it serving the purpose of bringing Brian Hill's Black Panther story into a place where more of these individual Ultimate series are going to start coming together. Because for a long time, some of them, and mainly thinking about Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate X-Men, they felt like they've been on an island of their own. So with that said, I don't want to be too critical too early on, because as long as this story manages to build a bridge between the different characters before Ultimate Endgame, then I'll feel like it served its purpose. And I just want to put that out there. But aside from that, with the question being asked, what purpose does this portal tech serve? At first, Shuri's like, well, I don't want to jump into any conclusions. Like, she doesn't want to confirm anything because her and her team still need to do more research. But T'Challa's just like, now's not the time for hesitance. So Shuri just tells him the teleporting energy is just the first piece of the puzzle. And she goes on to say, I think this is not a weapon, but rather an invitation, or perhaps a key, which has Storm asking like, okay, an invitation to what? Or a key to unlock what? Which for T'Challa, he doesn't believe in either case it can be something good. And that's when Shuri responds saying, I can't say for certain just yet, but I believe it'll be used to unlock new beginnings. And right there, with hearing Shuri's theory, this is just one side of the coin, because we quickly find out that other people are thinking of this differently. Because right after this, we go to Janet Van Dyne with her saying, Doom and Iron Lad think she might be able to let the Maker out of his chronal quarantine early. And as she goes on to speak to Miles here, she says, which means your sister could be the key that unlocks the end of the world. So of course Miles gives her this look like, come on man. before he says she's only 11 months old. Because at this point, they've made their way to Rwanda, just outside the Wakandan border. Because remember, in the last issue, Tony and Doom picked up the Maker's signal, so it makes sense how they were quickly able to find Miles and his sister, so they know for a fact she arrived in Wakanda. And for good reason. Miles is just like, this has been taking too long. He's asking if this thing can go any faster, because again, all in all, it's been weeks since Miles and his sister arrived here, so of course he's terrified for her safety. But also throughout this, we get a look into the thoughts of Hank Pym, which right now is him just thinking about Miles and how he feels bad for this kid, coming from another world and trying to find his sister. And for a moment here, Hank's thinking like he could relate to that. And we'll come back to what he means by that in a little bit, because things go deeper as this continues. And I really like how it's done, because as Janet and Miles are talking here, there's a moment here where she gets on Miles' case for not sitting still for the past few weeks, where during that time they had him sitting in a studio apartment in Trenton, New Jersey, but Miles would always leave whenever he saw someone was in danger, which then led to him eventually being called the New Jersey Spider-Man. And there's a moment here where Miles is even like, I'm the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, what do you expect me to do? So Hank is like, I don't know, watch TV? And that's where Miles is like, man, this universe ain't even got Crunchyroll, what am I supposed to watch? And that's where Hank asks him like, wait, you use sushi as TVs in your universe? Miles is like, bro, what? And I'm sorry, but that whole back and forth was just hilarious. But again, with Miles wanting to get to Wakanda as fast as possible, because on Earth 616, it was nothing. So Miles goes on to ask Janet, aren't y'all this world's Avengers or something? Shouldn't you have like a Quinjet or a teleporter? And right there, Janet's just like, what's a Quinjet? And as far as the teleporter, she lets Miles know that they do have one, but it uses a lot of energy, and Tony says that stuff's not cheap, which is why we've seen that there's times where Tony will tell Janet to shrink down to use a teleporter to minimize the amount of power being used. And Miles is just like, I'm just saying, my Black Panther got me from Brooklyn to Wakanda in like an hour. Which is kind of a flex, but then when Janet tells him, look, we're not the Avengers, we're the Ultimates. We have what we have. And right there, as soon as Janet says the Ultimates, Miles has another one of those Earth 1610 recollection moments, though this time around it's more like deja vu instead of what we've seen before when Miles would encounter someone who crossed over from Earth 1610 to Earth 616, who would feel familiar and literally have him in pain, like he's facing a bad memory. And I went way more into depth on this when we covered issue 1, so I won't go too far off the deep end here as far as Miles' history on Earth 1610 and what happened during Secret Wars, but to see this happen again on Earth 6160, it's kinda crazy. But to take it a step further, when Miles has this moment, he gives Hank this look that has Hank like, wait, is it just me? Or is he looking at me funny all of a sudden? Like he knows something about me I don't? Looking at me with, is that disgust? Because really, in comparison to the Hank Pym of Earth 1610, the original Ultimates universe, where Miles, the Maker, and James Hudson Jr. come from, to put it mildly, that Hank Pym was a dog. Like for example, there was this time when Janet and Hank had this huge fight that started because Hank was jealous of Janet's friendship with Steve Rogers. And at this time, not only did Hank put his hands on Janet, but when Janet shrank down, his knee-jerk reaction was to use a can of bug spray. But then things got real interesting like 3 issues later when Captain America found out and hunted down that Hank Pym almost like he was Batman. And I'm not just talking about using the satellite to find Hank Pym, because even after he found him, Steve beat the brakes off of Hank only to then tell him to go giant-sized, just to make it somewhat of a challenge. And after that, Cap even spit on him. But even with saying this, I know sometimes when I bring it up, people will also mention 616 Hank Pym, who definitely has a crazy history. But the original Ultimate Hank Pym, he was another level of scumbag. And I want you guys to kind of just keep that in mind with us seeing this Hank from Earth 6160 as we follow him through his thoughts, as well as the history between him and Janet on this world. But in the here and now, in the middle of this, when Miles' spider sense goes off, he tries to tell them to stop the truck, just seconds before they find themselves being attacked by the Dora Milaje, who immediately refer to all of them, including quote-unquote Jersey Spider-Man, because that name is sticking now, as known terrorists. So of course they try to explain themselves and say that they need to see King T'Challa immediately, but there's something about Hank and Janet's choice of words that rubs the Dora Milaje the wrong way and has them thinking that they've come to threaten their king. And much of that also has to do with the world believing that the Ultimates are international terrorists, so there's also that. So right away the Dora Milaje attack, and one of them even says, hey, the spider's wearing a vibranium suit, only for Miles to be like, vibranium nanomesh, actually? But who's counting? But I always think it's funny anytime we see the Dora Milaje go straight into attack mode, because right away it makes me think of that song where it's like, kill my enemy, die by fire, die by fire. Because they really not playing out here. And it doesn't take long for the word to get back to T'Challa, with it being presented to him as an attack from the international terrorists, the Ultimates, which again falls in line with the perception that the media has been pushing. But as far as T'Challa's concerned, when it comes to the Ultimates, he's been meaning to speak with them for some time, so he hasn't been buying the whole terrorist propaganda. And to him, even if that were the case, and they were actually here to take him out, he would still rather face them head on. So as he gets ready to leave with Eric and Aurora, they leave Billy behind with someone to look after her just before they head out. And as they do, for a moment here, we jump back into the thoughts of Hank Pym, with him saying here, what do we do for the people we love? Anything. We do anything. We cross universes and continents. We brave strange alien landscapes. We fight kings, armies, and monsters, even if we hate it, even if we're afraid. Afraid of what they'll do to us, afraid of what we'll do to them. At this size, my perceptions are useless, so my helmet starts translating. That's how I know Janet is, at this moment, 4 stories tall and single-handedly holding off a small army, and that Miles is making short work of the wall. But beneath their feet, there's another small army, and they listen to me. They speak in smells. My helmet translates speech into a complex pheromonal signal. I used to have nightmares about dying ants screaming in pain. I actually tried to apologize to them once for the millions I'd killed. Stupid. Even with the helmet, they didn't understand the concept of forgiveness, or guilt for that matter. So I stick to the simple things. Swarm, bite, consume. But just as they're finishing up here, a storm hits, with it being the all but subtle arrival of King T'Challa, Storm, and Killmonger. And T'Challa tells them here, Ultimates, your attack on the sovereign kingdom of Wakanda has been interpreted as an act of war. If you do not stand down, you will face the full military might of the most advanced nation on Earth. And Killmonger just has to add on to it, with him saying, no sudden moves, fluid extrusions, changing in size, or mass. And that just has Miles like, hey, yo, like time out. But no, he tells him like, wait, because he wants to talk to T'Challa for a moment, because all Miles wants is his little sister back. But when we head over to Billy, we find out that the woman who was watching her, she's actually a hand agent, which isn't a complete surprise, and I mean, in the here and now, yes. But we knew from Ultimate Universe 1 year in that Nick Fury had multiple hand agents planted not just in Wakanda, but around the world. So it's crazy to see this one not only show up, but also grab Billy and report back to the Beast helicarrier and tell them that she has the key to the city in her possession, which just confirms that Fury and the others want to use her to release the Maker early. So of course, when Miles finally gets here, only to find that his sister's gone, it just has him devastated all over again. But then next here, when Hank starts to speak, Janet cuts in to speak on the behalf of the Ultimates, and it shows us again with Hank thinking, I let Jan take the lead like I always do. Because remember, this Hank, unlike any of the other Hank Pyms we talked about, this one's very soft-spoken, very timid, very passive. And before we go any further, I want you guys to keep in mind, on Earth 6160, this new universe that Miles has traveled to, with the Maker creating a number of changes throughout history to get rid of the different heroes, we still haven't had them all explained to us. And the Hank Pym of this world is one of those cases where it's like we know some of the backstory, but I got a feeling there's way more to Hank and Janet that we have yet to see. But in the here and now, I want you guys to keep in mind what we saw in Ultimates issue 1, when we initially met Hank and Janet, who were running their extermination service, when at the time there were also references to Hank having those bad dreams. But for as long as we've seen the two of these guys, Janet's always been the one to step forward, with Hank hanging back like I'm gonna let her do her thing. And so far, I've liked this a lot, because this Hank had a bad head injury, and it's been implied like Janet is protecting him. But for all we know, Janet may have been involved with what caused Hank to be this way. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit, because in the bigger picture, there has been quite a bit of dark foreshadowing around these two, like the whole thing with the Ultron extermination device, which is kind of hilarious because that's Ultron's line when he does his ultimate in Marvel Rivals. But also around this time, if you guys remember, when Tony recruited Janet and Hank, as soon as Hank saw Tony, he was sweating bullets, and he started saying things to Janet like, you know I'd never hurt you no matter what. But at the time, this is how we found out that Hank had already seen the origin box that Tony gave them so they could be Giant Man and Wasp. And Hank hid this from her because he didn't want Janet to know some of the details that he learned from Tony in that message pertaining to who Hank would have become. And the crazy twist at the time was learning about his head injury, which left him with irreversible brain damage. It was made clear in the message that the Maker was responsible for it. And I want you guys to keep all of this in mind as we move forward, because in the here and now, as Janet's taking the lead, where she's basically talking about strategy with T'Challa and Storm, as far as what their next move should be, with Janet prioritizing the war as opposed to just going after Miles' sister. But right now, this still focuses on Hank, with him saying, I let Jan take the lead like I always do. Sometimes, like now, I hardly recognize her. A little over a year ago, we were two exterminators from Jersey. Now, she's shaking hands and exchanging strategy with kings and goddesses. The truth is, she'd probably be better off without me. Sometimes I think about leaving, just disappearing without warning one night, doing her a favor. But I'm not strong enough. I love her too much. I've loved her for as long as I can remember. Literally, her face is my first memory. When I woke up in the hospital, she was right next to me, lying in the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. That's my origin story. Life before that face is vague. The man I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be some kind of genius. That's who she fell in love with. This brilliant guy. I'm who she got stuck with. As we see Janet helping Hank read, something that says I can't go back to yes, and she helps him out here telling him it says yesterday, as he goes on to say yesterday because I was a different person then. And after that, present day Hank goes on to say, but she stuck with me anyway. She stuck with me through everything. Through the weakness, the fear, the lying, the denying, the truths I couldn't face, and the choice I tried to take from her. She stuck with me, so I'll stick with her through anything. Just like Miles won't stop until he finds his sister, at least until one or both of them are dead. So yeah, in the here and now, after hearing present day Hank's thoughts, and comparing that to everything we know about his history with Janet, with his accident being caused by the Maker, as well as the information about Janet working with Director Fury, and now this has me thinking that Janet was in on it. Like, I would not be surprised if the Maker or one of the Furies approached Janet and either showed her what Hank was going to be, or for all we know, he might have already been a dog in this universe, just like the original Ultimate series. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of them came to Janet and proposed the idea of doing this to Hank to keep him from becoming who he quote unquote was supposed to be. And I want you guys to let me know in the comments what you think, because I think this whole situation is dark no matter how you look at it, because there's no clear victim or villain here. And I'll even go as far as to say here, if Janet actually did do this, if she was in on this, I still believe that she loves Hank and she cares for him deeply in a very dark and twisted way. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. But aside from this, the next thing we see, it just makes Janet look even more guilty. Like, she's not beating these allegations. Because like I mentioned before when we were focusing on Hank, in the here and now, Janet, she's talking to T'Challa and Aurora about strategy. And right now, she is suggesting that whoever's taken Miles' sister, they're long gone. And again, she frames it like, oh, we need to focus on the war and not just Miles' sister. And the reason why she's doing this is so that the hand agent who's taken Miles' sister, and who is clearly not long gone, would be able to get away without them pursuing her. So yeah, Janet. And again, let me know what y'all think in the comments. But speaking of this hand agent, she doesn't get that far, because as she's making her way to the rendezvous point, she's stabbed through the back by the ultimate Silver Samurai, who's working in service of Emperor Sunfire. So yeah, going forward in Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion, this is getting ready to bring in the characters we've seen in Ultimate X-Men. And I also have the Ultimate X-Men playlist in the description below for those of you who want to see what's going on in Hino Kuni with the newly formed team. And with that said, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and let me know in the comments what you guys think about Ultimate Janet and Hank. Cause I got a feeling once some of these people start getting their memories back, like Hank and Miles, and even the Maker who lost a chunk of his brain, but that's another story. But once everyone starts getting these memories back, I got a feeling that things are gonna get unhinged on a whole different level. But let me know what you guys think. And so now real quick, I wanna give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.